So I guess I started a long time ago when blogging was really taking off in the kind of influencer sphere. So there were loads of mummy bloggers, and I was kind of in the mummy phase. So, you know, like I was watching all these mummy bloggers and looking at what they were doing, and somewhere along the line, it just kind of twigged in my brain that business people could be using this kind of content in the same way that these people were using it. So they were getting huge followings, these girls, like amazing things. And they were just posting stuff about their life. And then I started to see them shifting that little bit into monetizing what they were doing. So in amongst that, I was kind of looking at it and going, well, businesses in that service-based area and B2B area weren't doing anything at all like this. They were still putting, you know, their corporate brochure onto the internet and calling it a website. So it was kind of just that evolution of taking the idea of putting out content that people were interested in, but niching it into specific markets so that you're really only talking to the people who are interested in what it is you have. So that's really just the crux of where I started. So I convinced a friend of mine who was a sales trainer. I said, hey, can I write your blog for you? And she's like, oh yeah, that would be awesome. So we did that, and we got pretty good results for her. So she was really happy with that. And incidentally, that was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and she still has a lot of that content up on her website. And this is her 3rd website rebuild. So yeah, so there's that kind of longevity in this kind of content as well. So I basically just went, okay, so I'm going to do content for B2B businesses, and it's going to be based around ongoing content, and I'm not going to do any of the writing myself. I'm going to get writers, and I'm going to find people who have sort of that industry knowledge. So if I'm writing for a law firm, I'm looking for a lawyer who has got specific knowledge in that aspect of law. So not just somebody who's come out of a law firm and has decided to become a copywriter, but somebody who's really, so I niche down the writer as much as the industry is niched. And that seems to be the magic. So the more niche the organization is, and the more niche the writer is, the better it all works. So that's basically what we do. We work in mostly written content. We do video content. We do opt-in offers. We do infographics. Anything that's really needed to keep that engagement journey happening. So it's usually high value, infrequently purchased products or services, and it's keeping databases engaged over long periods of time in between the buying points, which, you know, a real estate agency might only buy or sell a rent roll twice in the lifetime of the business. But having the people there interested over that period of time and educating them, like constantly educating them, you know, how do you make sure that your rent roll will be valued at its maximum? Those kinds of things, you know, just helps people understand when they get to that point. It's like, oh, have we got all our paperwork in order? Have we got, you know, processes and systems for our property managers, all that kind of stuff. And so that just helps people. And so when it gets to the point where the broker's having the conversation with the agency, he's like, okay, oh, you guys have already done all that stuff because I've been telling you for the last 3 years that that's what you need to be doing. And it also makes it a much easier sale, to the point where it's often not a sale. It's just like, oh, I've been receiving your newsletter for 3 years. I need a rent roll moved. What can we do? Okay, so I think the real question there is about understanding where your audience is and where you want to get them to. So if we take the example of an established business versus a startup. So an established business might have a database of, let's say, 5,000 contacts, which they've never engaged. Then you've got a startup with 0 contacts. So the balance of content is entirely dependent on the strategy that's going to get the results that you're looking for. So the startup is going to be looking at, how do we get people onto our database who are qualified for the biz that we have? Whereas the more established business is going to be looking at that database of 5,000 people and going, okay, how do we re-engage these people and help them understand where we are now as a business and how that's relevant to them? That also helps them clean out the database of, you know, the people who don't exist in business anymore, or who've moved jobs or aren't interested. And so they get a tighter, better engaged database. And then they would need to go, okay, so our business goals for this database are going to be, you know, to move 50% of that database into paying clients. It's a fairly ambitious target, but as an example, whereas the startup might be saying, okay, so by the end of the year, we're looking to have a database of 1,000 people who have signed up via our opt-in and therefore are interested in what we're doing. So yeah, so there's a lot of different moving parts to keep in play. And then looking back at the established business, you might go, okay, so they lost 50% of those 5,000 people in the initial engagement. So then they're going to go, okay, well, what do we do now to keep filling that database so that it keeps generating leads for us? So then they go back kind of to the startup mentality and go, okay, how do we get these people in? Okay. So then they're looking at, what's our opt-in offer? What's the follow-up sequence, when somebody signs up for our opt-in offer? Where's the sales process kind of dovetailing into what we're doing here? How does the content support the sales process? And how does the sales process then feed back into the content that we continue to put out? So there's kind of like a closed loop of content in there. I think that if you're putting out content that people look at and go, it's a sales piece, you've wasted your time, and it's probably brand damage, to be honest. So the sales process, I always believe that the sales process should be behind closed doors, so to speak. So when you've got gated content and that gets people onto your database, then you've got the opportunity to sell to them. Okay, but that's not out there content. So the call to action on, so if we're looking at organic traffic, so you've got an article up on your website, you've posted it on LinkedIn, somebody comes back to your site, they read it, the call to action should always be to the opt-in, okay, to get them onto the database. So all roads lead to getting somebody onto your database. Once they're on your database, you can then nurture them for as little and as long as you want, depending on your product, the kind of turnaround time on what you do. So if you're looking to get more landlords to sign up to your real estate agency, that's not a high turnover thing. So you're going to really want to put out a lot of nurture content so that landlord looks at you and goes, hey, these guys seem really decent. My current guys have just put their rates up or whatever. Maybe I'll go and have a chat to them. So it kind of, the sales process becomes less of a hard sell and more of a conversation that is relationship based. And this is all very long term. Like I'm talking, this can take up to 5 years for these things to happen. But it's a little bit like the flywheel of an engine, which is really hard to get started. But once it's going, the momentum of the power behind that will keep it running for a really long time. So yeah, so I always use that example because people are kind of like, oh, well, gosh, we did it for 6 months. And it's like, dude, the car barely moved off the blocks. Yeah, okay, so trying to work out which content should be gated and which shouldn't be gated is, it's almost like there's a formula for it. So if your competitors are putting out similar content, you need to put out the same thing, okay? So if somebody's looking for, mag wheels for their vintage car, and all your competitors have an article that says, the best mag wheels for an FJ Holden, and you don't have that article, you're invisible. Okay, so you need to look at what everybody else is doing, and you need to have that in your voice, with your opinion, with your branding, so that when somebody Googles you, you are also there. Because basically if you're not there, your competitors are, and nobody's going to come looking for you, go, oh, where's that business? Why aren't they on page 1 of Google? Said nobody ever. So that's the, if everybody else is doing it, you should be doing it too. So that's your first thing. That's all free content. The next thing is to find something that you think your particular audience would be interested in enough that they pay their name and email address for. So you might go into, the latest technology for mag wheels for vintage cars. Here's our latest report. Now, if you're a vintage car buff, you would go, oh yeah, give me that report. It also helps that somebody who's not a car buff is not going to end up on your list because something's free. And that's kind of one of the other parts of this. If you're not using your content as a filter and trying to get everybody to love you, then you're going to end up with a very messy database. So you need to look at making sure that you are actually pushing people away at the same time that you're trying to attract them. So what you really want is a database full of people who actually want exactly what it is you have, and not people who are kind of, maybe. And I've done a lot of experiments with opt-in offers and put out all sorts of different things. And by far and away, the most popular one I ever did was how to write articles for organic SEO. And every time I run a campaign for a launch, the number of unsubscribes I get is almost 100% people who signed up to that particular opt-in. And I knew it was going to be about opt-in, and my digital agency was, oh, that's going to rock, man. That's an awesome one. Everybody wants SEO. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not an SEO company. And we went on this whole thing. And so I went with it. I got heaps of signups, but almost 100% of them will unsubscribe when I'm selling content marketing. So yeah, so it's interesting that you have to be very conscious of what it is that you're putting out there. So just because it's going to get lots of leads doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get lots of the right leads. So getting your opt-in offer right is tricky. And then beyond that, if you have something that adds value to a free offer, so if you've got I can't think of something off the top of my head, but if you have a report on why B2B businesses should be doing content marketing as your free offer, you might have the Minter research that goes with that for a $10 upsell. And so that's where you start moving into paid content. And again, that starts to filter out people who aren't really interested or aren't really suitable. So if they're not going to pay $10 for a report that gives them more information on the one they just downloaded, maybe they're not right for you. But the ones that do just download it, pay for it and download it, then they move into a list of people that are hotter than the general warm leads. So everything that you're doing in terms of content needs to have a kind of mission behind it. So, is this getting people in? Are they the right people? Are they more qualified than these people? And so you start to kind of massage your database into turning that into a real lead generation thing that has actual value for the business goals. I don't think you can do marketing without content. So I would say that content is marketing, and because it comes down to everything about your brand is marketing. So the name of your business, your colorways, your fonts, your tagline, the intro passage on your website, all those things are marketing, because all those things are saying, hey, this is who we are. Maybe you guys are a good match for us. Maybe you're not. So, all of that stuff. So your website is marketing. Every piece of content on your website is marketing. Content marketing is basically anything that people will look at or read on the internet about you that isn't directly asking for money. I think that's probably the definition there. All the fun of last year's, the hangovers started a little bit. The fact of the matter is everybody's online doing business all the time. And if you're not there, you're literally not there. So the first thing is, invisible's not going to work for anybody. But the second thing is that if you're not putting out content that is of value to your particular niche, then you're probably doing more damage to your brand than you are helping it. So I think there's a lot of emphasis on being specific about what you're doing. So, people will often go, oh, well, we're doing heaps of content, but we're not getting any results. And it's like, well, what results are you looking for? And they're like, well, what results should we be looking for? So you really need to wind it all the way back and go, okay, so, our goal for this year for the business is to, grow by X%. And then, in order to do that, we need to get 15 new clients at the, $150,000 mark. And these people need to be, we want them to be in this area or this area. And so we're going to have to start putting out content that really speaks to those people about those issues. And so you kind of wind it all the way back, and then you go, okay, so what that means is that we're going to have to put out X amount of articles and videos per month, and we're going to have to put them on the social media channels that these people are at. We're going to have a call to action that gets them onto our database. Then we're going to have follow-up content that keeps them engaged. So the number of times that I've gone to websites, signed up for their newsletter or signed up to their free offer, and then crickets. And it's like, guys, look, I came here, I signed up, and you've given me nothing. You need to have at least an email that isn't, do the double opt-in. It's got to be, here's the link to the free thing. Did you, here's a point that we really love about that report, or, and you can stretch out 6 weeks of content just with automated emails with nothing in them but very conversational, chatty, branded emails. So people go, oh, there's that company again, there's that company again. So I think really, it's not really a trend, but always deliver value. Know your audience. I think it really does come back to knowing the audience and knowing the struggles that they are having, or the desires that they have. And this isn't that sort of avatar work where it's like, my ideal client is Jane, and she drives a little red car and she goes to the gym twice a week. And it's like, what keeps Jane up at 3 a.m? And it's like, well, no, don't even ask that question. It's more about, is she forward thinking, or is she a move away from pain type of person? What triggers her to think about what it is? So she might, she might get to the gym every week and just go, oh man, everybody else is just so much better dressed than me. That's her trigger point to sell her some new shoes or some new activewear or whatever that happens to be. Now, it's not about finding them when they have that trigger moment. It's about understanding the trigger moment so that you can actually proactively trigger that on a Facebook ad. Okay, so it's just like, that feeling when you go to the gym and everybody else has got the latest gym wear and you're a bit, in your sister's hand-me-downs, or whatever that trigger point would be. So I think for any small business, know your audience, and that can be really hard. So sometimes it's a case of going, who are the people that you really want to work with, and build your database from that position. Because a lot of people start out and they go, oh, we're not really sure, so we're just going to kind of market to everybody and see what we get. But I think small businesses need to be a bit bolder in terms of saying, look, we really want to work with people in this bracket, and we want them to be forward-thinking people, goal-oriented. So we're going to use language that really taps into their desire to be better people, or better at business, or better at whatever, fitter people, rather than pain-based language, which just taps into, oh, woe is me, and there's a whole thing. And so part of what we do with our clients is we build out an actual dictionary of words that the writers can and cannot use. So for example, and it's really simple things. It's like, do you refer to your customers as clients or customers? And so the writer then has a whole list of things. And so any business, even when they're starting out, can start to build out things like those dictionaries where they go, okay, this is the language we use in our business. And that by default will start to attract certain types of people to the business. So they can quite proactively and quite quickly start to build a list of people that they want to work with, rather than the other way around, where it's just like, I'm just looking for people who work with us, regardless of, and that's how you get rid of, clients who don't match very well with you. So I'm a mum, I have 2 teenage daughters. And so when I started my business, I literally had to work out how I could have my business in between all the things that I needed to do to keep them on track. So I would, at the beginning of each term, so I run in school term sprints. So the day that they start school, I start my sprint, and the day the term ends, I end my sprint. And I organise the holidays by just making sure that things are happening that I don't need to be directly involved with every day. So I'll always make sure that the writers have been assigned their quarter's worth of work, and they may have more than the school holidays to do it in, but they've got it and I don't need to do anything until that work comes back. Or I might have sent off a whole bunch of new topics to a client, which they've got a couple of weeks to approve. And so, yeah, so it's all about really just managing, it's all about managing the school year. So, and that's what keeps me on track, because I know that I've only got that school term to really get the bulk of the work done. And then I get a sort of breathing space, so that the terms are very intense. And I just have a notebook which each day I divide into things that I need to do, so a to-do list on a client basis. I have my hard appointments, so anything that actually has a time attached to it goes into another box. And below that, I've got all the other things that I need to do, like, I don't know, order somebody a new school uniform or stuff like that just has to get done as well. So if it's not on that page at the beginning of the day, it's not going to get looked at. And then anything that doesn't get done gets carried over to the following day. And it just kind of rolls on through the term like that. So that's how I stay on track.